Cosplay here. It's been a long time since I did a Storytime video, and in this video I'm going to talk about my journey with my Astrid cosplays and what that character means to me. Now, I cosplayed Astrid for the first time in 2018, so that's 5 years ago. And that happened after my husband asked me if I wanted to join him and a friend in a How to Train Your Dragon group. Astrid wasn't really on my cosplay list back then, but I thought the movies were okay, and I just love joining group cosplays, so I said yes. When I was going to start working on that costume, I was actually in a pretty bad headspace. I felt really bad about myself and my cosplays, and I felt like they weren't good enough. And that was basically just because of a very long time of stress. So I'm gonna give you some context on that before we dive further into the story. Life always comes with an amount of stress. That's just how it is. But we all know stress doesn't make you feel great, especially when you just have a very long period of time where you're just go from one stressful thing into another. And that sort of happened to me. Mid-2017 I graduated as a teacher, and we all know being a student can be very stressful, especially in your final years. So there was that. And then after you graduate, you think it's gonna get better, but no, that's not really how it works. Because then you get thrown in the adult life and you suddenly have to get a lot of things arranged. For example, there's job hunting and moving out, and those are very exciting things, but they can also be very stressful. And then it doesn't help that when you finally do get a job, it's as a substitute teacher and your contract gets renewed at the end of every month because the teacher you're replacing doesn't really know if they're gonna come back or not, so they wait until the last minute to say so. So I ended up teaching at that school for an entire year, but at the end of every month I didn't know if I was gonna have a job the next month or not. And when you have bills to pay, that's not a very great situation to be in. So all of that was going on, and of course life keeps happening, so other stressful things keep popping up. It doesn't just give you one thing at a time. And as I said before, stress is not a great feeling. You don't feel good about yourself. Things that normally go smoothly just are a lot harder for some reason, and things that wouldn't bother you that much suddenly have a way bigger impact on how you feel. And after a while, those negative feelings started to reflect themselves also in my cosplays. I started to feel bad about them, and then some things happened that of course didn't help with that entire situation. To give you a few examples, when my husband and I were cosplaying Rick and Summer, a lot of people really focused on his cosplay, which I understand because he looked amazing, but they would often just completely ignore me. And with that I mean, when they ask for a picture, they would angle their camera so I wasn't in the shot, even though we were clearly posing together. They would just talk to him and ignore me, and then sometimes it would be very awkward when they asked him questions like, oh, how did you style the wig? Or how did you make that? And then he had to point to me. So in any other situation, I would have probably been able to deal with that, but at that moment I just couldn't, so that affected me a lot more than it should. Another example is when I was talking to someone at an event and they really liked the Wall-E skit that Acid Lemonade Cosplay and I did, which is great, but then they went on and on about how much better Acid Lemonade's cosplay was than mine. For way too long they just kept rubbing it in oh, he had so much more details and it was just so much better and yours was okay. And praising cosplays that you like is absolutely okay, as it Lemonade cosplay did look absolutely fabulous. But don't go bring other cosplayers down. So those were just a few examples that made my feelings about my cosplay even worse than they already were at that point. So when I was about to start Astrid, I just didn't feel great. On top of that, I also didn't have a job anymore because they didn't know if after the summer break the teacher was gonna come back or not. So the whole job hunting thing had to start again. And I was sick of it. I was sick of feeling like crap. And I knew I had to do something to get out of it. It wasn't just going to be handed to me. So instead of my first plan, with just quickly making the cosplay to fit with the group, I decided to actually put a lot of time and effort in it, hoping that I then would feel better about it. I also started watching the movies again, and before I thought they were okay, but this time I fell in love with them. I think watching them a few years later, having new experiences, they just resonated with me a lot more than they did before. And that sparked something. When I worked on Astrid, I actually started to like what I was making, and I started to feel happy crafting and not just feel miserable because I wasn't happy with what I was crafting. And as time went on, I started to feel better and better about that costume. I also started to watch this series, which I got the outfit from. I hadn't watched it before, and my love for the franchise just grew with every single episode, and I started to feel better and better about costume. And I also started a second costume that summer, and I also didn't completely hate that. There were of course still times where I did hate things that I was making, but I also started to like things again, which was something I really needed at that time. And when I cosplayed Astrid for the very first time, I actually felt proud of what I made, and I was happy with the costume, even though there were some little imperfections still there. By that time, my life was also getting more and more on track. I had found a new job, and this time it was going to be for an entire school year, so I didn't have to deal with the stress of, am I still gonna have a job next month? My husband and I had been living together for almost a year, so we had gone through a lot of the still figuring things out process part of living alone. So my personal life was coming together a bit, and my cosplay life was also taking steps in the right direction. Now, healing, of course, is a process, and my personal life was going in a good direction. Also helps having the most amazing husband I could ever wish for, but I realized my cosplay life wasn't there yet where I wanted it to be, and seeing how Astrid had made things progress in the right direction, I decided to remake the costume and learn from everything that I had tried and really make this costume the best that I possibly could. To help me give an extra push, I decided to make that costume for the ECG pre-selections. I know it's probably a bit weird to make a costume for a competition because those things also give you stress, but I noticed that when I make a costume for a competition, it's easier for me to focus on getting all the details right and really putting effort into it. So for me that sort of was a backup plan to make sure this costume would be the best it could be. And somehow that worked. I experimented a lot with different techniques and didn't just go for my first idea but tried different ones to make sure I got the right one, and the costume was progressing great. It was also just very fun to put all the pieces next to each other and just see how much I had improved in such a short period of time, and seeing me constantly improve just gave me a confidence boost, just time and time again, until it was the day of the competition, which was somewhere mid-2019. And putting that costume on just made me so happy with the progress that I had made, that sort of already felt like a victory. And when I didn't get selected, it also didn't bother me, because in a way I had already won something. I had won my confidence back. And I was happy again with the things that I did as a cosplayer. And to be honest, I actually was kind of relieved not to get selected, because if I would have been selected, I would have probably felt the need to continue working on that Astrid costume. And after making it twice, spending months and months and months on that same outfit, I kind of was done with it and ready to make something else. So of course I made another Astrid cosplay, this time from the second movie, but I only took 2 weeks to make it. I used a lot of stuff from the first cosplay. I bought some things that I then altered, so it wasn't perfect. It was pretty quickly made. But the best thing about it is that I was still happy with it and proud of it. And that was something that I really needed. Not every costume needs to be your best work. You can make a quick costume where you hot glue some stuff instead of sewing them and still be happy with it and proud of it, because cosplay, of course, needs to be fun. And for that, not every costume needs to be of the highest level. Accepting that and realizing that also just made me so much more happy again with a lot of costumes that I hated before. And it really made me rediscover my joy for cosplay. After that Astrid outfit, I started making a whole bunch of different costumes. Of course, I was planning my next Astrid cosplay, which was going to be the outfit she wears at the end of the last movie. When I saw that outfit, I immediately fell in love with it and wanted to cosplay it. But I also wanted that costume to be of high level and to be perfect. So I started to gather materials, taking my time and doing a lot of research to see how I would tackle certain aspects of it. That time did become a lot longer than I planned for, because the pandemic happened and then I got really sick. But at the very beginning of 2022, I was fully recovered and fully ready to tackle this costume. I had been gathering fabric for 3 years. It was about time. And something else that really motivated me to start working on that costume that year was that the art book suggests Astrid is 30 years old when she wears it, and I was gonna turn 30 that year, and it was like, perfect. When I started this costume, I didn't decide to join a competition. I was like, I will see if I want to join one or not, but I still want to make this the best costume ever, but I want to do it for me, and not because I want it to be perfect for a competition. I want it to be perfect for just me. And that was another big milestone for me, because before that, every time I make a costume that's not for a competition, I'll take some shortcuts. And when I do it for a competition, I go crazy and everything needs to be perfect. But now I could do it for me. I was going to make an Astrid cosplay as perfect as I could because I wanted to, not because I needed it. And that was just an amazing feeling. And I did take my time with this costume. I worked on it for almost a year and a half. I did take some little projects in between so I wouldn't get tired of working on this costume. I learned from the past time I made Astrid that I cannot work months and months and months on the same costume. I need something else in between to keep my mind happy. And when I was almost done with the costume, I did decide to join a competition, just because I like competitions way too much. I decided to do the costume competition because I didn't really have time anymore to put an act together. It was the first time I ever did a costume competition, so it was a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I was like, I want to be on that stage, just gonna do it. And wearing that costume was just the most amazing feeling ever. That outfit for Astrid is by far my favorite one. I was 30 just like her, and I know age doesn't matter, but it made me happy, okay? And another thing that made it even more special for me was that I was 12 weeks pregnant when I first put that costume on. And when Astrid wears that outfit, she is a mom, and somehow that made me even feel more connected. It also made me cry like a wee baby when I won that competition. I didn't expect it because there were so many other great cosplayers, but when they called my name, it was like all of my emotions that I had felt through those 5 years got released all at once, and it just was the most incredible thing. And yes, my husband says I would have cried anyway, pregnancy hormones or not, and he's probably right. Winning that competition was like a cherry on top of an already amazing cake. And it also sort of felt like coming full circle, going from a very, very bad place to a very, very happy place. Now, the reason I say almost full circle is I am not done cosplaying Astrid. I want to do so many more outfits, and I think she will just always be my comfort character that I go back to whenever I feel a bit down or just because I can. And I guess it sort of does feel like the end of a chapter, but like the first chapter in a long story, if that makes sense. Anyway, I know this was a very long story time. I tried to keep it as short as I possibly could, but it was a story I really wanted to share because it just means so much to me, and also because it's a huge part of who I am. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and bye!